Hello Sudoku friends, welcome to a hard Sudoku from sudokuexchange.com. You know the rules, they're simple, solve the puzzle. So let's up to it. There are a couple of ones blocking down, and we also have ones blocking across here, so this is a 1. There's a 1 blocking across, there's 1 blocking up, so one of these squares must be a 1, and therefore one of these must be a 1, but these two ones block those two squares, so this is a 1. There's a 5 blocking over, and there's another 5 blocking over and 1 blocking up, so a 5 must go here. A 5 blocking over, another 5 blocking over, 1 blocking down, so a 5 goes here, and therefore a 5 here as well. This square also must be a 5, and we now have all the 5s in this grid. On the surface, this looks suspiciously simple, but you never know, because it's supposed to be a hard puzzle. Let's follow the 4 blocking up and the 4 blocking down. This is therefore a 4. 4 blocking over, 4 blocking up. These two squares can be 4s, and therefore these two squares can be 4s. This 8 blocks up, making this an 8. And one of these now must be an 8. This 8 blocks over, this blocks up. One of these is an 8, and therefore this square must be an 8. These two squares must be a 9 and a 3. We got a 9 in the row. So this is a 3 and this is a 9. That makes this a 9, of course. This square can only be a 3. And we got 3's blocking up and down and over. Therefore, this is also a 3. 1 blocking up and down, making this a 1. 1 blocking over and 1 blocking up. This is therefore a 1. Do we have all? Yes, we have all the 1s now. 7 blocks down, this is a 7. These two must be a 4 and a 6. We got a 6 in the row, so the 4 must go here and the 6 here. 2 digits still missing in row 3, and they are 9 and a 6. They can't be solved just yet. These two squares must be a 4 and a 8. And these must be a 7 and a 2. 2 and a 4, 2 and a 4, 2 and a 4 here, making these a 6, 7, 8. And therefore, these two must be a 9 and a 3. We got a 3 in the row, so the 9 must go here and the 3 must go here, I think, yes. These two squares now must be an 8 and a 3. We got an 8 in the row, so 3 goes to this square and this must be an 8. 3 blocking over, and therefore one of these is a 3. 3, 6, and a 9 for these squares. And we can't solve that. How about these 3? They must be a 3, 7, and a 9. Also nothing to do yet. 6, 7, 8 for these squares. Also not so simple.
Evidently not so simple.
But for the first column, we need to find a 2, 7, and a 6. Nothing here yet. None of these squares can be a 2 because of the 2 blocking, so one of these squares must be a 2, right? And therefore one of these squares must be a 2, and this 2 blocks down, so a 2 must go in this square. This is now a 6 or a 7, and this is a 6 or a 7. The 8 blocks over here, and this 8 blocks down here, so one of these squares must be an 8. Therefore, none of these 2 squares can be an 8, and the 8 must go to this square here. These now must be a 6 and a 7, and these must be a 6 and a 7. So we have a 6 and a 7 here, here, and here. I wonder what kind of a chain that might lead to later.
And start a chain reaction.
Back to the 7, 6, 7, 6, 7, 6 here, and a possible 6 here. The only 2 squares in the top row that can be a 6 is this square and this square, because a 6 blocks up here and a ghost 6 blocks up here, and we have a 6 blocking up here. So these 2 squares can be a 6. We already know that these 2 squares can be a 6, right? And that means that if this square is a 6, then this square must be a 6. It's almost like an X-wing. If this square is not a 6, then this must be a 6. And this cannot be a 6. So either way, we cannot have a 6 here. We also cannot have a 6 here or here. And that actually helps us because we know that these 2 squares must be a 6 or a 9, or rather a 6 and a 9. And since we know that either this square is a 6 or this square is a 6, we know that this square cannot be a 6. Therefore, it must be a 9, and this must be a 6. The last digit that we need up here is a 9. And that 9 gives us a 9 for this square here. What else changed? Well, one of these now must be a 9. These are still a 2 and a 4. But what about these 3 squares now? They must be a 6, 7, and a 2. And we know that this cannot be a 6. It could be a 7 and a 2. This can be a 6 or a 7, so and a 2 also, unfortunately, can go here. So I'll have to think a little bit more about that.
I'll have to think about that one.
We might actually do the same little trick or exercise. I wouldn't call it a trick because it's a known pattern. I believe it's called a colored chain on the sevens, because we know that these can be sevens. This is a 7, 6, this is a 7, 6, this is a 7, 6. So let's just mark all the sevens that are possible. A 7 is possible here and here, and here and here. It's also possible all of these places, but don't worry, not all of these squares are going to be important, I think. A 7 can also go here, 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 and here, and of course here and here. And here is the thing. If this is a 7, this cannot be a 7. This must be a 7. And this candidate cell can go away or must go away. So if this is not a 7, if it is not a 7, then this must be a 7, of course. And again, this square cannot be a 7. So we can remove the 7 as a candidate from this square. And we already removed the 6. So this must be a 2. And that makes a 2 out of this square and a 4 out of this. This 2 blocks over. So does this. This 2 blocks down. Therefore, this is a 2. And this must also be a 2 now. And this must be a 7. One of these must be a 7. Therefore, one of these must be a 7. We still have a 6, 7 here. Here rather. Here and here. What else do we have in the top row? We have a 7, 6, and a 4. 6 and a 7 in this column. So the 4 is forced into this square, and therefore this must be a 4, and this must be a 8. And that makes this square an 8. This last square must be a 9, and that gives us, if I'm not, yes, a 9 here. These two squares must be a 6 and a 7. And these must be a 6 and a 7. And 6 and a 7 and a 6 and a 7. What else is missing here? A 3. So one of these is a 3, but that's not really helpful, is it? Yes, it is, because we have got 2 3s blocking over, and therefore this is a 3, and this is a 3. This is now a 6 7, 6 7, 6. We are ending up with just 6 7s. Oh dear. But we know now that this must be a 7 because it's the last remaining missing digit from the column. And that should help, because now we can do this. And we can do this. And this is going to be a 6, and this is going to be a 7. This was a very nice puzzle. I do admit, though, that if you don't know about these change, and if you do not have by value cells in the grid, then these chains can be very hard. This was a bit easier because we had all these 6s and 7s, and they kind of beg me to investigate whether a chain is possible or not. In this case, I was successful, but full disclosure, I'm not always that successful. More often than not, I fail to find these, especially if I do not use pencil marks, because it gets much easier if you use pencil marks at this stage. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this puzzle, and I hope to see you again back here soon. Goodbye for now.